get everybody seated, please. We're about to launch the night of celebration from the Arsenal. We are about to take off.
I mean, just the obvious sort of question really is why Black Arsenal, and what prompted you to want to write the book, and what are the aims of the book?
It really began around 10 years ago. I was working at the London School of Economics in the sociology department, and I was thinking about my own cultural history as a black person of Nigerian descent who grew up in northwest London in a very, very black area of London. And I was a Liverpool fan, as everyone knows, growing up because of John Barnes. But I realised in the early 90s that a different kind of black masculinity was becoming quite important for people around me. Mostly older teenagers and men who I was spending time with, at the barber shop or in the churches or in the playgrounds. And they were making associations with them, Ian Wright, as someone who represented a much more visceral working class identity for them. It's doing the bogle on the pitch, or the gold tooth, or the earrings, or the way he carried himself. So I began exploring what that meant, and little by little, it became clear to me that, at least in London, black people, in my opinion, seem to have a connection or affinity to Arsenal that was born through former players such as Ian Wright, but also, through certain experiences, be it the Notting Hill Carnival every single year where you see Arsenal shirts everywhere, or, particular experiences where Arsenal become quite important, through, again, affinity spaces or experiences or culture or beyond as well. So I began exploring, piecing together bits and bits. Initially, I thought it would be like a 200-word piece in a New Statesman or something, but it became bigger and bigger and bigger. So over the years, collated more research, archival imageries, oral histories from people. I did a talk at the Barbican in October 2022 with Paul Gilroy, who is an Arsenal fan since 1966, he tells me all the time. And the reaction to the talk was amazing. I mean, we went live with a booking in April of that year. It sold out within 24 hours. And I was getting emails from people all over the world saying, I'm black, I'm an Arsenal fan, here are the reasons why. What you're proposing is everything I've known, but not been able to articulate it or explain it in some way. So that was really the kind of beginning of the book. Once I saw the reaction on the evening, I thought, well, I could spend the next year or so writing a book myself as an academic in a very, very dense way. Or I could include other people who may have other experiences that I don't know about as a non-fan, who are organic, who can make amazing contributions. So, Gail Lewis, who we see quoted there, has been going to Arsenal for so many different years as a black woman. What is her experience as a black woman going to the matches on match day and beyond as well? That's an important experience, which I want in the book. I think she's more placed to write than me. So that became one. Also speaking to the players, Paul Davis. I spent a lot of time with speaking to him about, his experiences. I mean, he's been at the club for 15 years, and came to the youth academy, was the only kind of black person for a period of time in his year group beyond Chris White. And for many years, in the early years, the Terry Neal years, was, the only kind of black player on the team. So I think he has a massive role to play in what we experience now, but because without his labour and his efforts being there, you would have no Rocky Rocastle or Kevin Campbell or Mickey Thomas or even Ian Wright becoming what he became then. So I think he is someone who kind of just glues together all these kind of periods of time. Of course, we had Brendan Batson earlier on in the 70s, but he wasn't here for a particularly long time. But of course, Ian Wright is a hugely important figure here because he arrived in 1991. I remember as a young kid, seeing the Nike "Can I Kick It" advert and thinking, okay, here is someone who is doing something very, very different to what I've seen before. And there was a certain affinity towards him as a black person as well. Even him doing the bogle, I think is quite important there as a black cultural, expression. I think also at the time, he was doing things in terms of asserting a black British identity, which was still being contested at the time. As you know, in the early 90s, the England team weren't doing particularly well. Had a lot of black players in the team: Ian Wright, Paul Ince, Les Ferdinand, Des Walker, Carlton Palmer, Paul Ince. And, they were still getting Combat 18 going to the Wembley games and abusing players and sending bullets in the post to them. So I think that Arsenal were probably more significant in really asserting a black Britishness because they had a core of black players in the team who were winning. Think about, Rocky and Kevin Campbell and Mickey Thomas and Paul Davison, later Ian Wright as well. But also, Soul to Soul were emerging, in the late 80s, early 90s. Other forms of kind of black culture were coming to prominence within mainstream television and beyond. Even other kind of sporting arenas, such as, Linford Christie or Frank Bruno, they're asserting the Union Jack in ways they weren't doing before. So I think all those things contribute to make Ian Wright an important cultural figure at the time for black people, but also he transcended race in many ways. I had friends who came from, white working class backgrounds or Irish backgrounds who all had Ian Wright number 8 at the back of their shirts. So what we appreciate now in Bukayo Saka, I think, is also identifiable in Ian Wright throughout the 90s and beyond as well. So without his labour, as the first poster boy of the Premier League in many ways, maybe Henry wouldn't have been the global phenomenon he was. Maybe Saka wouldn't be the poster boy he was now. There's already things being done that condition the ground for black players to excel at Arsenal, but also the black fan base to find connections within them as well. Kanu was a massive inspiration for so many kind of people in the black diaspora in the UK of African descent when he joined. Ezra Collective, were influenced by kind of Kanu and beyond as well. You have, things across fashion and music and culture. It isn't simply just football or what happens on the pitch. It's the ways in which what we see in the Arsenal stands are reflective of what we can see on the Holloway Road or in Archway or in Brixton in South London or beyond. The everyday multicultural. And what makes Arsenal important is because you see the connections between what the club is as a culture and a community and what the actual community beyond other social spaces looks like as well. And I think it's rare that you find that cohesiveness and connection and continuity in other clubs, I think, in the UK or even beyond as well.
I was saying to you earlier, Clive, certainly in Africa, certainly here on Haters TV, we have a lot of Arsenal fans based in Africa and Nigeria particularly. Do you think that is down to players like Kanu and that sort of Wenger era, and then a lot of African players playing for Arsenal?
Yeah, I think African players, at least in the English leagues, were often seen in quite comical ways and derided sometimes. Certain kind of cultural and ethnic assumptions were made of African players. I think the Wenger years really dispelled that because there were African players who were successful. Kanu was an Olympic gold medalist with the Nigeria team in 1996. So they come with pedigree from amazing clubs, be it Inter Milan or beyond as well. Patrick Vieira, of course, via Senegal, became a World Cup winner. These players were excellent players who were successful, who were African. And I think that really helped kind of push back those narratives and stereotypes about the African player, what he was, who he could be, where he could play. You had kind of African players, in the Wenger team who played in all different kinds of positions, whether they're playing as strikers or defenders or fullbacks or central midfielders or wingers or beyond as well. So, we think about the Invincibles, Kala Toure, Lauren, amazing players, all, from African descent, who I think really kind of helped to accentuate the sense of appreciation and recognition that fan bases on the African continent felt towards Arsenal in particular. So it's been a massive, massive impact, I think, in helping Arsenal, circulate itself, in the African continent.
He comes from Senegal, he plays for Arsenal. That was a chant I used to scream. And when that rings out in a stadium, it has a rippled effect. And a lot of what we're seeing today is that rippled effect. It's not a finished article, but I'm proud to support a club where it's further ahead than some others. Do you know what I mean?
Because I saw you in another interview. I know this book's created a hell of a sort of wave of interest. And I noticed that the night when we were here at the stadium some while ago, Julian Timber and Thomas Partey were both here taking an interest. And in one interview, so you said that you thought you would broken Thomas Partey's hand or something, or did you attack him that night or something?
Oh, it definitely wasn't an attack. So just to kind of clarify that. So what happened was I went down to what was then called London Colney last year on the invitation of Andy Exley, who runs the Arsenal programmes, to guest at the programme for the Black History Month celebrations last year. And I went down to interview Rhys Nelson, who was a lovely young man, by the way. And while waiting for him, I was introduced to Martin Sundegaard and Saliba, all very, very nice gentlemen. And Thomas Partey was going through into the canteen, so I saw him and offered my hand to shake his hand, as everyone else, and he offered to spud me instead, which I was happy to oblige with. So spudded each other. We're both big guys. I went a bit too firmly, maybe anticipating his firmness as well, which wasn't forthcoming. And he just seemed like he hurt his hand a little bit. I thought nothing of it. Finished the interview, went home, and then read that evening that he had injured himself and didn't train that evening or that day, and wasn't flying out for the Champions League game. And I literally thought, okay, I've injured him here. Like, the whole Black Arsenal project is over. I'll never be allowed anywhere near the ground again. Thankfully, what transpired 24 hours later, that he had some kind of hamstring soft tissue injury. But I generally thought for around a day that I'd broken his hand or something, and that was the reason why he couldn't train or play, or was injured for like another kind of, I think, 4 or 5 months afterwards. So, yeah, an interesting kind of anecdote for a moment. Generally speaking, quite, issue-free period of time writing the book.